It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Good morning and welcome to Accelerate. I couldn't be more excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Tom Searcy, the author of a new book entitled Life After the Death of Selling: How to Thrive in the New Era of Sales. Now, you may know Tom as well because he's a co-author of a great book called Whale Hunting: How to Land the Big Sales and Transform Your Company. You know, there's a lot of talk about how sales is changing. In fact, some experts, and I use that sort of in quotes, claim that sales is dead. In fact, one forecast I recently read projected that fully 25% of business-to-business sales reps will be out of a job by 2020. I mean that these jobs just won't exist, replaced by online transactional buying journey that doesn't require sales reps. Now, I don't expect the changes to be that severe, and this is a big unless companies and sales reps don't change. You know, that's the challenge for sellers, how to stay relevant and value added in the eyes of their customers. And my guest today, Tom Searcy, is going to share with us exactly what he believes how sellers need to do, or what they need to do to thrive in this emerging sales environment. So Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Andy. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I've fortunately been in business for now about 30 years, and I've had the opportunity to grow 4 companies that have grown from either 10 million to 100 million or start up to 200 million. And all that has been with being small companies, selling very, very large companies and selling very large pieces of business.
Oh, I love it. That's exactly what I did as well.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
So, I've got 3 kids and live in Indiana, and I have a consulting firm that focuses on teaching and training companies to be Davy and be effective in really competing against Goliath to go sell those big, larger Fortune 500 and other companies to get big pieces of business.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and that's I said before, and I worked for, a number of startup companies in Silicon Valley and Southern California, and that's exactly what we did, is we were selling large, multi-million-dollar complex communication networks, competing against the big guys, right? So right. How did we win? That was really sort of the secret, and that's sort of how I started my business as well. So tell us what some of these companies were that you were working with, that you got your start in sales.
You know, and really, I got my start in operations. Really, I started as a chief operations officer and general manager, CEO, and president. And I really have a bend towards operations. I really have a bend towards systems and processes that really make you effective over and over again in large account sales. And my perspective on that is that, you know, magicians and rock stars in sales are great for small and mid-sized sales, but if you're going to get big sales, you need a team, and not a team of salespeople, but you need a team of subject matter experts with the leadership of an executive who has a sales understanding and sales perspective. So, I had the opportunity to sell about 190 Fortune 500 companies inside of 4 different companies whose names you don't know because they're small and mid-sized.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so why is it that small companies, oftentimes small mid-sized businesses, think that they can't go compete for these big orders?
I think that, the first part, Andy, is just mindset, right? I mean, there's this sense that, we just don't have the resources, or the big guys won't take us seriously, and that they're looking for the stability and the financial resources of a big company. So it's really their own mindset that keeps them from taking the next step. Secondly, they're looking at their own infrastructure, and to a degree, they're a little afraid of getting the big piece of business because they're saying, if I get this big piece of business, how will I handle it?
I've got a strategy for that. I'm sure you do as well.
Well, I do, and I'm glad you do as well, because I think these things, again, are self-limiting beliefs. And because they're self-limiting, you can't get to the mechanics of landing a piece of business if you don't overcome the mindset that's keeping you back. So I think if you change the mindset of yes, we can from no, we can't, then you can look at the mechanics of a process that changes your success rate and increases your chance of winning those big pieces of business.
Yeah. Well, I one strategy, not to jump ahead too far in the conversation, that I always used with clients and actually myself when I was on these large complex deals. A small company is what I call the start small theory, which is, yeah, I mean, and I talk about this in my latest book, is, a customer wants to buy 10 big systems, and if you had to go install them all at one time as part of a big project, yeah, it's beyond the scope of your logistics ability to handle it. But if you sell one at a time, and especially if you narrow that first part of that first deal down to one deal instead of 10 systems, then the bigger guys tend to lose interest, right? If they think the size of the deal has shrunk from 10 to 1, they oftentimes lose interest and walk away. At least that's what I've found.
Well, I think that's accurate. I think you can also sign up the large contract and build it into phases of implementation, which I think is very similar to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And building in that phases of implementation allow you to have the larger contract outlined so you have the confidence that we're going to get the entire piece of business.
Yep.
But through those phases of implementation, you're able to control, as you would indicate, your infrastructural support of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking it's such a great strategy for smaller companies too, because the big companies, the sales reps, the managers, they're accustomed to thinking, look, I need to bite off revenue in big chunks.
That's right.
And if it starts looking like it's going to be a series of smaller chunks that have higher risk associated with them, they lose interest.
You're right. You're absolutely right, and exactly. And commission drives those. It drives everybody in sales, but on those bigger folks, they just have much bigger quotas.
Yeah. No, very interesting. So, okay, well, maybe we'll get back to that. But I had another topic I wanted to explore and really I'll start with the question. Is based on what I was talking about, the sort of the interview prelude is people projecting the death of sales. I mean, is selling on the verge of dying?
Well, the U.S. Department of Labor statistics does indicate that 22% of the business-to-business jobs are going to go away between now and 2020. That's 1 million jobs, and they're going to go away. And now, so that's the U.S. Department of Labor statistics. And so why are they going to go away? Well, you mentioned it earlier. The transactional jobs are going to go away 33%. The jobs that are in the ability to install and explain how it works and to demonstrate how products and systems work, the 22% of those are going to go away. And the jobs that in sales that are about completing RFPs and RFQs and facilitating interactions with procurement and purchase, well, 25% of those jobs are going to go away. So those three areas, those jobs are going to go away. So that's going to make up the million jobs that are going to go away. But there's this fourth area, which is really the growth area. It's going to grow by 10%, Andy, and that's the job called the lead me job. And the lead me job is the sales role of going out in the marketplace, working with companies and telling them not, asking them what is your problem. It's those salespeople that can walk in and say, I know who you are in your marketplace. I know within categories what your most likely problems are, and I have an idea of how to solve that problem for you. And that's a lead me strategy rather than a consultative ask me strategy. And that's the area that's going to grow in the course of the next 5 years.
Interesting. And interesting that you contrast that with the consultative sale. So, I mean, because there's an aspect of consultation in both of them. What you're saying, though, is that the difference is going to be coming up is that, again, you said it's more of a leadership. It's that you have an answer for them. It may not be clear initially what that specific solution is going to be, but you're inspiring them to follow you.
That's right. We refer to it as the neighborhood versus the house number. And we say, look, this is the neighborhood of where your problems are. This is the neighborhood of where your competitors are going. And this is the neighborhood, Mr. Customer, for us, that your customers are going. We have a solution inside of this neighborhood of area of problems, but we don't know exactly what the house number is. Now let's go in a consultative way and let's get some precision together on where that house number is. So it allows you to lead in a general form, and then it brings you back to a consultative model so that you can get precision with your customer on how that affects them directly.
Right, and even the consultative model, I think, is changing, and again, much more of a leadership role required, because the term that's coming up more and more is this co-creation. Right?
That's right.
So we're going to work with the customer to co-create some value that from which they're going to be able to drive the ability to make a decision about which way to go.
Exactly right. And that term co-creation, I think, is the better term for the current model and the go-forward model of the consultative sale, because the consultative sale has moved forward. Unfortunately, customers are impatient. I mean, I shouldn't say unfortunately. The nature of customers is that they are impatient. They are expecting you to be bringing with you answers, more answers, and fewer questions.
Yeah, well, I think that speaks to what you talk about in your book, is that the nature of the relationship with the customer is really changing. And I wrote about this in my first book, Zero Time Selling, is that, they really don't want you to take them to lunch anymore and play golf with them. They want to know what you've done for them, right? What are you going to do for them?
Well, you bring up a great point. That's one of the evolutionary changes that's gone on, and that you make a huge point there. The ability to develop the personal relationship has actually been restricted by governance and by time constraint. Some people can't sit down and have lunch with you or play golf anymore because they've got rules.
They're too busy, right? And they have rules, as you said.
That's right.
Yeah. So it gets more down about. I don't know. One of the themes I think that you brought out in your book too, I said it's, what have you done lately for me? It always brings to mind this quote that I'd found from Jeff Bezos, founder, CEO of Amazon, about what I thought sort of summed up sales the best I'd ever seen it. And he was saying, we don't make money when we sell things. We make money when we help customers make purchase decisions. Mm-hmm. And that's really what you're talking about, right? Is the nature of the relationship with the customers. How do we help them get this job done? Not how do we build this friendly personal relationship that 20, 50, 100 years ago was seeming to be the really hallmark of selling.
I think that's a great quote, and I really agree with it. One of the ones that I agree that matches up with that, of course, is that salespeople are always selling a better future, and they're giving confidence to their customers that by making a choice with them, there's a better future for the buyer and the buyer's company, right? So it's about a better future every time you meet with them.
Right. And one of the things you talk about that I think is really important is that there's fewer opportunities to meaningfully engage with prospects these days. So you really have to, as you talked about, bringing the team of specialists, but you really have to be focused on, deliberately focused on what is the value I'm going to provide during this interaction, during this one of these few opportunities I have to really meaningfully interact with the buyer.
Well, that's true. And some things have changed. As you know, Andy, 5 years ago, the key decision makers in a large purchase were about 3 people. 3 people were involved in the buying process. In the last 5 years, and this is a crazy number, but it has grown from 3 people in the buying decision on the prospect side to 7 people. So, when you're in buying processes, change selling processes, not the other way around.
Oh, absolutely right.
Right. So if they added 3 people, they went from 3 people to 7 people, we have to likewise change our approach. Now, in the same window of adding a lot more people, their desire to spend more time with us, with that number of people, has decreased. So you add more people, but you cut the amount of time you want to spend with us. Those two things competing against each other make it difficult.
Right. And part of that too is that they're more self-sufficient. Right. So, right. There's the access to all this information. You quote the CEB research saying that, buyers are 57% of the way through their decision-making process before they engage with sellers.
That's right.
Why is that so controversial? That number, when people use it, there's different factions. Some like that number and some really hate that number and think it's completely irrelevant. In fact, Serious Decisions came out with a study that seemed to sort of contradict that. So, does it really matter? Isn't it really just the absolute number is not really as important as the fact is the customer is more self-sufficient? You bring up the exact idea that I think makes the point. The point is that if the customer is more self-sufficient, when a salesperson comes in, they do not feel like they are in control or absolute control of the customer in the process. The customer has more control of the information that is out there, and therefore they are influencing the conversation at a greater rate. My father 35 years ago, when he was selling, and I had the privilege of riding along on some of his sales calls when I was very young. Very cool. What did he sell?
He was selling pressure-sensitive labels and packaging materials and the machines that would go ahead and apply those, robots and all that kind of stuff. So, and he was a territorial sales rep. And so I was very young, and I would go on these trips with him. And when I did, he would walk in to meet with people, and they would go, "Wow, I've never seen anything like this. And show me how it works, and what would we do with that? How would it get applied?" And all the rest of those kinds of questions. Now, if he went out in the marketplace right now, they could have accessed that all online, seen videos about all of that, compared the companies out online. They could have looked at blogs to find out about what people thought about his company versus other companies. I mean, the amount of information that somebody would have when they walked in the door, they would know model numbers, right, Andy, about what pieces of equipment. And so my father would be in a position of defending or interacting with someone about down to model number level, about speed and quality of all the things, and including price. And so he's now already behind the curve of the conversation. Rather than introducing new ideas, he's either combating or affirming the concepts of the piece of the customer. Now you don't feel like you're directing the conversation. You feel like you're responding to an interrogation.
Right. Which is no place to be if you're trying to sell something. You don't want to be behind the curve.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we want to talk about this concept about how, and you bring it up in the book, about how do sales reps, how do companies maintain relevance, moving forward in this environment that you described. So, but before we go, I pose a question right before the break to every guest on the show, and so I'm going to pose this hypothetical scenario. We'll get your answer after the break. So here it is. You've been hired as a new sales manager in a company whose sales have basically stalled out, and they really need to be turned around. Senior management's really got to focus on making sure this happens quickly. So what are the two things you would do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact? So think about that, and we'll take your answer after the break. After the break, we'll be back with my guest, Tom Searcy.
Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today.
Welcome back. My guest today, Tom Searcy, author of a new book, Life After the Death of Selling, How to Thrive in the New Era of Sales, as well as co-author of a well-known book, Whale Hunting, How to Land Big Sales and Transform Your Company. So Tom, before the break, I'd posed the scenario to you. Your new sales manager hired into a company needs to have a sales turnaround. What two things would you do on the first week on the job that have the biggest impact?
Well, sales managers, when they're evaluated out there in the marketplace, have the two most effective tools that they have. The studies that show the biggest impact that they make is, number one, is picking the sales targets for their salespeople. I mean, they pick the exact companies I want you to call on. The second thing they do is to ride along and provide input on the sales calls that their salespeople are making. So in the first week, I would ask to break down the territories or targets of their customers and their prospects and look at what their performance has been with inside of those, and really do an analysis of where you're going, who you're spending time with, and what's your yield out of doing that, including current customers and new prospects that you're doing. I would want to break that down and find out what was going on. Second thing I would want to do, I'd want to assess my salespeople. I'd get in the car or I'd get on the plane, and I'd start spending time with them in front of customers. There's no better way to understand what I have to work with than spending time with the people.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Great answer. I like it. All right. And very short, too, compared to most, very concise compared to most that I hear. So, excellent. So, let's talk about this concept of relevance. And that's an important topic you bring up in your new book, but is that if companies want to maintain relevance to their customers, is they have to solve, you say they have to solve bigger problems for the customer. So explain what you mean.
Well, if you're going to move out into the level of a senior executive sponsor, and as we start to sell larger and larger deals, you need a senior executive to sponsor you, because the budgets are bigger, the sign-offs of the final decision are bigger, and the impact inside of the organization is going to be bigger. And so the problems have to be bigger. They move from product quality, service, and price. Those are lower level decisions. Those are the kinds of decisions that a CEO or senior vice president or even a director is going to delegate down, because those are, you can be quantified in a certain threshold of product performance, a certain threshold of price, or a certain threshold of service. So you're going to delegate those down. If you go up to those senior executives, their problems are measured in time, money, and risk. So time is not a level of service. Time is about speed to outcome. Now, outcome is going to be a variety of measures, but they're either trying to get certain kinds of things to happen faster for them, either before board meetings or by end of year, or within things that are going to support their customers. Money is going to be something around the overall organization's ability to produce profit or reduce overall cost, not incremental cost.
Right.
And risk is going to be something that's going to take down the overall effective risk of the organization's ability to perform and sustain its value over time. It can even include, how do I take things out of my balance sheet and move them into my income statement? Those kinds of movements that happen, those are the large pieces. When we go back to what you were doing in Silicon Valley, those are the kinds of things, time, money, and risk, that were not measured against price, product quality, and service. Sure, there were incremental measures downstream, but the kinds of things that you were talking about, senior executives, you were talking the language of time, money, and risk.
Yes. Okay. So how does a smaller company, this is, it's maybe not accustomed to selling something, that's quite that size or that complex. How do they start that process of structuring themselves to go after this type of business?
Well, they first have to change the lens through which they look at the customer. Most companies that we start our work with, when we ask you, what is your value to your client or your customer, and how do you speak about it, they normally say, well, we sell the following things, and our customers value us because of this. And that's product, quality, service, and price. Mm-hmm. And then we go and say, okay, what are the problems that the CEO, president, and senior executives, what do they have that you fix? What is the issue that they're trying to fix? And by the way, when you're fixing that, I don't want you to use or list any of the terms or names or words associated with your product, quality, or service, or price. They struggle a lot with that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because everything they think that they're selling. So we're talking to a printing company, and the printer wants to use printing. Companies buy us for our printing. The president of another company doesn't buy you for your printing. They buy you because you're able to get a change out in the marketplace of how their customers look at them. Or you're able to give, if they only had 3 cycles, which they could get marketing messages out in the marketplace, because you're more efficient, they're able to get 5 cycles of marketing message out in the marketplace. So they have 2 more marketing messages, and so on. So you become much different, because all printers can print well, but that's not the problem that they really have. So you got to get to time, money, and risk. And so changing the lens to look at what the problem a senior executive has is the first thing that they have to do. And so put the lens around to what are the problems of senior executives, and then talk about the problem. Don't talk about your service.
And well, here's a question that's sort of interesting to me as I was going through the book and reading this, is I sort of tell, when I work with customers, and I talk about this in my book, is products are fall into one of 2 categories. They're either strategic products or tactical products. Right, and 99% of the products in the world are sort of tactical products. It's the paper clips, the paper, the things that sort of mundane things. So if you're in strategic products, necessarily, as you said, involve more time, money, and risk. So the decision has to be made higher in the organization. So if you've been accustomed to and you sell primarily tactical products, how do you suddenly start becoming more strategic?
Well, so by the way, it's a great question. So I think you start off by laying out the org chart of titles inside of your customer base. And there's a bandwidth of naming the kinds of problems that they have. So if we start off at the bottom and it's paper clips, and at the top it's overall reduction of spend inside of non-revenue generating areas like office supplies, and then you can name those things, it's very possible your company can sell to every band of management, right? Down here, they still need cheap paper clips, right?
Right.
Up here, they need a more efficient way of having transparency down through non-revenue generating pieces of purchase, right? So as you start to look at that, you're going to see tactical and strategic effect inside of those particular customers. And so that helps you to look at the bandwidth. And one of the things that's interesting to me is that as you're selling to people inside of the same company, you can get 3 sales inside of a company because different buyers are seeking different solutions. One of the phrases that we often use is you get sent to whom you sound like.
Yes.
So if you sound like someone is the managerial level, you'll be talking to managers.
No, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, I like to talk about, who cares about this, right? It's sort of defining it. And as you talk about in that strategic term, who cares about this topic from a strategic standpoint within a company? Because eventually you find, as you said, you find the title that does.
That's right.
Excellent. So the key thing that you talk about then is being able to mobilize a team of specialists. And this also, has certain adherents and people that disagree with this quite violently within sales in terms of how specialized knowledge your sales team needs to have. So how does a smaller company start building this team of subject matter experts and real ultimate specialists to be able to help work with the customer, do this co-creation process? What's the first step?
I think the first step is to ask who's going to be in the room from the buyer's side of the equation. So if finance is going to be in the room, whether it's procurement or purchasing or supply chain management or someone from the finance department, here's who they do not want to speak to. They don't want to talk to the salesperson. It doesn't matter how knowledgeable the salesperson is. It says sales on their business card. That is not who they want to talk to. They want to talk to somebody who's got a finance background or someone is in the finance department. So instead of looking internally, who do I want to bring or talk to, you look at the people across the table and say, who wants to speak? To whom do they want to speak? And I think the guarantee is they do not want to speak to the salesperson.
Right.
Executive sponsor, the person with whom the salesperson speaks, yes, they want to talk to the salesperson. Everyone else wants to speak to a peer.
I think it's a great lesson. And it's fundamental to that is selling is really a team sport, especially as you work to the bigger, more strategic deals. The whole organization has to be involved.
It does. And the piece about it is that the people that are involved do not have to have the responsibility of selling. Right. Their job isn't to sell. Their job is to problem solve.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's a great way to say that. And again, you're also, the way I like to help with companies when they think about that too, is that you're providing a service to your customer. Again, not selling, but providing a service.
Agreed. And the more confidence that the customer has in your ability to provide the service, the easier. This is not one of these closes where you push the document across the the board and you say press hard.
Yeah, 3 copies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the way you close a big deal.
No. Those decisions are made while you're not even in the room. So, well, good. Well, it's been a great discussion. Wish we'd had more time to talk about this, but for small companies, big deals can really be the way to grow your company. Yeah, maybe a lot of companies tend to think that it has to be, we got to expand number of salespeople and broaden the territory and get lots of smaller deals, where actually, as you talk about, it's really almost the opposite. It's focused on some bigger opportunities, more strategic. That can really be the driver for growth.
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good. We're going to move to the last segment of the show, where I've got some rapid fire questions for you. You can give me one-word answers, or you can elaborate as much as you wish. Are you ready?
Yes.
So what's the most powerful sales tool in your arsenal?
Questions.
Name one tool you use for managing your own sales that you can't live without.
Pipeline management tool.
Which one do you use?
Pipeliner.
Pipeliner. Okay. Who's your sales role model?
Oh, that's a good one. My father.
Excellent. He sold, you said, packaging equipment or...
Packaging equipment, custom equipment, and packaging materials, yes.
So besides your own book, what's the one book every salesperson should read?
The Effective Executive by Drucker, so that you can understand how to think like higher level executives think.
No, great suggestion. Here's the toughest question. So what's your favorite music to listen to sort of psych yourself up or pump yourself up?
I like to listen to probably a little bit harder rock.
Okay, such as?
I like AC/DC.
Oh, add one more to the list. That's number one on the list, by the way, over about 70 interviews we've done so far. AC/DC wins out. What's the first sales activity you do every day?
Stretch. And then after that, I mean, honestly, it's stretch and stretch and meditation. I like visualization.
Okay.
And so those things help me prepare.
Excellent. So when you say you're stretching, do you have a yoga routine or?
Kind of a couple of yoga stretches and then the same kinds of stretches that you do for athletics.
And then do you have a particular sport?
Running.
Running. Okay. Training for anything right now?
Right now, I would say a half marathon.
Excellent. Excellent. You've done one before?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of half marathons and 2 marathons.
Ah, good. Yeah, I'm doing a number of half marathons these days too. It's perfect distance.
It's better than marathons.
Yeah, I don't have the desire to do that. So last question is, what's the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
I get asked a lot, how do I get past the person who's in my way? Basically, how do I get past my current contact to get to their boss without offending the person who's in my way?
And the answer is?
You have to get them interested in impressing their boss because you're taking a new idea to that boss that aligns with their, meaning your prospect, branding that they're trying to show their boss. And there's 4 branding styles that you're really trying to get that they have when they're going towards their boss. And you have to reinforce that branding that they're trying to represent themselves as.
So in essence, trying to get your contact to also take some ownership in this idea or have them think they're taking ownership in that idea that they present forward. So it's their idea they're taking to their boss? That's
right, and the idea has to be bigger and more complex than themselves being able to present it.
Oh, like it. Well, that's a great suggestion. Great suggestion. Well, good. Well, Tom, I want to thank you for joining me today. My guest again has been Tom Searcy, author of Life After the Death of Sales. Tom, how can folks find out more about you?
Best place is to go to huntbigsales.com. We have an enormous amount of free material on that huntbigsales.com that people can access. We love people to access that material and get connected. We like to see Davies beat Goliaths.
Excellent. Me too. Well, remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And subscribing to this podcast is an easy way to do that, because then you'll make sure you don't miss any of our conversations with top business experts like our guest today, Tom Searcy, who share their experience and expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us, and until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.